Hey, thank you for watching this video in preparation for the art cell. Today we're going to talk about context, communication, and connection. We're talking about personal branding, so hang in there, but don't worry. I really want this conversation to touch on how to be authentic and what can really be gained from good branding. I want to give a more intentional introduction to the idea of personal branding, and I want to do it in a way that's more insightful and appealing to you as artists. As someone who studies business with a concentration in marketing, I've heard a lot of lectures and taken several courses about personal branding, and there really is just something missing in the way that we instruct and discuss personal branding. So I'm going to invite you to pause this video throughout, take lots of notes. We're going to have a few exercises where it's going to be critical that you pause the video and jot down a few things. So don't skip out because by the end of this, I truly believe that you will have the bare bones of what is a personal brand that's authentic to you and can be built out to help you reach your audience in the way that you would like to. But who am I? And what am I doing here? This is me. I'm Jada Wyatt. I love feeling energized by sharing ideas that I feel passionately about, which is why I've created this content for you, the artists participating in this year's art cell. I want to share a different perspective and hopefully help you gain a deeper understanding of a concept that's often misinterpreted. Like you, I'm a student trying to figure out how to piece together my passion and skills and goals to create a future that's uniquely mine. I'm here today to practice my skills in delivering meaningful messages in authentic and intentional ways. So now, I want to flip this question back on you all. So think of this as a very important icebreaker. So at the end, I want you to pause the video and make sure that you're jotting down these words. They're really going to come in handy. So first, 3 words that your best friend would use to describe you. For some inspiration, my best friend Raina would describe me as thoughtful, authentic, and caring. And then 3 words that you would use to describe your style. For me, I would say intricate, dynamic, and unique. And then 3 words that describe your goals. For me, that would probably be leadership, unclear, and passion. All right, if you haven't, go ahead and pause and jot down these words. Awesome. Okie dokie, moving on. And what are you doing here? Again, same thing. 3 physical adjectives to describe how your art looks. For me, I do a few different forms of art. I love to draw and paint, and I really love photography. But I also feel really creative in doing strategy and strategic planning. It's not a typical art form, and you might not even consider it art yourself, but I definitely have the full on artistic, creative mindset whenever I'm doing it. I feel the inspiration of an artist to the full extent. So I would describe my art as strategic, reflective, and intentional. And now, 3 emotional adjectives that creating art makes you feel. This one's really important. So think deeply about this one. And if you have more than 3, go for it. For me, I would say free, inspired, and thoughtful. And lastly, 3 words that you would say that you would love someone to say when they see your art. I would feel really flattered if my art was described as impressive, meaningful, and aware. So, again, if you haven't paused, go ahead and do that now. Great. Okay, so don't worry about reading all of this. It's actually exactly what I said when I introduced myself. So, I want you to understand from this how I was able to pull from the concepts of my personal brand to give you some context, to communicate my purpose, and start a connection with you without ever mentioning anything about what I study. So, just really quickly, over here on the right, those are some of the words that I just gave in this past exercise, some adjectives and some descriptors for me and my art and how I show up and my goals and all that good stuff. I used that word bank to create this introduction, this bio almost. And I did it without, harping on the fact that, I'm a senior and I study business administration with a concentration in marketing with minors in psychology and cross-disciplinary leadership and entrepreneurship. It's not relevant right now. And truthfully, it's not who I am. It contributes to my understanding of the world absolutely. But the things that I've shared with you at the beginning and that's here on the left right now, that is my personal brand. That's who I am. It's not defined by business, and it's not defined by anything of the sort, really. And that's why I didn't use that in my introduction. I wanted you to truly get a sense of me and my personal brand, and that is what we're going to work on today in this conversation. But I do want you to know that I have a bit of credibility, and I've taken many marketing classes, and I feel really strongly about my ability to strategize and to communicate, especially. Um, and I've just noticed like this huge gap in how we discuss this concept. And to me, it's a lack of authenticity. And I also understand that that would contribute to resistance from artists not wanting to pick up unauthentic corporate concepts. And truth of the matter is being able to understand this and apply this will help you in the future so much to be able to get connected to the right people and make money and not have to worry about supporting yourself whenever instead you could just do what you love and make a living off of it and have a really fulfilling life. And that's what I want for you, truly. So I want to kind of introduce this topic in a way that will resonate with you more, so that you'll hopefully pick it up a little bit better. But yeah, so by the end of this, I want to change the way you think about personal branding and help you start to build towards a thoughtful, authentic, and sustainable personal brand. So, just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to further deconstruct this idea of personal branding, and then we're going to rebuild it and then empower you to start actualizing the things that we've discussed. And I'll leave you with a few hard earned tips so that you don't have to get the business degree. I'll do it for you. So, in deconstructing, look, even I hate corporate buzzwords. They, in my opinion, they dilute messages and they make them less meaningful. And based off of my introduction, I hope you know by now that that's not what I'm about. So, for this conversation, I promise to keep the buzzwords to a minimum. But yeah, I want to address the resistance that you might be feeling and that I know that most artists feel to corporate buzzwords, just anything to do with business concepts. Because aside from the stigma around corporate adaptation and like selling out your art, all these things, there are great reasons why artists would be resistant to this personal branding. And I just kind of want to address them and validate them and let you know that those are real fears and it's not lost on me, but the fear of selling out is huge. And I understand that being very early in your career as a young artist, having your entire career ahead of you, thinking about selling out now, I get it. That's a line you do not want to cross. And even boxing yourself in creatively is daunting. This if you see personal branding as limitation to what your art can be, then I completely understand why you would not want to touch it and you would rather just distance yourself from it as much as possible. But truthfully, these fears and anxieties, although valid, they're coming from an underdeveloped idea of what creating a personal brand will do for you. And I don't fault you for that. Even within the business school, we don't fully accurately touch on what personal branding really should do and what it should feel like. So, I don't know, it just in every presentation or lecture I've ever heard on personal branding, there's so much emphasis on social media and the configuration that goes into it and the upselling that's required. I just don't like it. And I never see people addressing the fact that being untrue about what is authentic to you and your goals and your truth, it's the opposite of what personal branding should really be doing. Because in reality, good personal branding will make you stand out in just the way you deserve. While you don't want to represent yourself in a way that's too overstated or out of reach, You don't want to leave people to rely on their own flat associations of what it means to be an artist. By this, I mean people are going to make whatever inferences that they have based on their own lived experiences. And just to introduce yourself as an artist is really selling yourself short. You're not just an artist, you're an artist who captures the emotion behind systems of oppression, or an artist who bridges disciplines, or an artist who expresses your unique identity through art, or whatever type of artist you are. And that's so important. And I want to help you be able to communicate that in a way that will eventually help you reach the people who are really interested in you and your art and want to support you. And so that's what this discussion today is about. So just rebuilding back the idea of personal branding in a more intentional way. Like I said, it's important that you think of personal branding not as a buzzword, but as a chance at intentional perception. What does this mean? Well, it means that you can literally say or write exactly what you want people to think about you and your art. And that's so powerful. Like, think for a second. We think about personal branding in this really convoluted way, but truly what you're doing is so powerful. Writing or saying or showing people exactly what to think. That's huge. And and it's not just for the corporate world. This will not only help you get more interest from people that don't really have a good understanding of your art style, which is important, but it will also act as the main source of identification for patrons to commission you or purchase from you. Think about that. If you can tell people in few words and visually and all these different avenues, and we'll touch on that, but if you can tell people exactly what they should think and feel, then the people who want to think and feel that, they're gonna find your art approachable and engaging and insightful and inspiring, and that's what you want. You want people to be able to experience your art and see your art in a way that it resonates with them, and it makes them value the art, and it makes them value you as a talented individual. Sometimes as artists, your viewers need a little nudge to tell them what to think or feel. You know, everything is digital. We have art all around us, and utilizing this intentional perception will accomplish this goal of telling them, not necessarily telling them, but giving them the direction um, at the bare minimum. And that will, be accomplished through conversation or definitely your social media. If you have a website, like there are many different ways that your personal brand can show up. And we'll touch on that, like I said, a little bit more later. But just being able to see even the subliminal markings that are related to your brand, it communicates a message. It really, really does. And this doesn't have to be specific or even necessarily narrow because, you're young artists and your art is going to continue to grow with you. And so your brand doesn't have to be something that's incredibly narrow and specific, like, you know, I use oil paints to draw, pets and animals. Like, you might not do that forever. Maybe what it is instead is that you're trying to use art to convey the loving relationship between humans and animals. That's much broader. And it gives you the opportunity to make a lot of derivative forms of art that aren't specific and tied down. So think about that, it doesn't have to be specific or narrow. I mean, honestly, if the point of your art is to challenge people to create their own meaning, that's awesome. And that is part of your personal brand. Now, I want to just kind of further help you rethink what it is that we're talking about with this personal branding, this intentional perception. We're trying to get at the epicenter here of your passion, your knowledge, your talent, your goals, your mission, anything that is heavily important to you. We want to be able to put you directly in the center where all of those overlap. where you're going to find the most meaning and the most rewarding elements of work whenever you're working right here in the middle. It's where you're gonna feel that natural flow state where creativity is just spilling out of you. You love what you do. You never feel the intense pressures of having to produce something that doesn't resonate with you or anything like that. Positioning yourself here with your passion, your existing knowledge, and also the knowledge you hope to gain, and then the talent that you really deserve to be able to monetize, to be honest. Putting yourself in the middle of all of these is going to be critical. What this will do is connect you to the right people, to the proper roles and settings and the proper opportunities that are going to carry you throughout your career and help you see success, whatever it is that you define success as. Being able to have an authentic brand, an authentic, intentional perception, one where you're speaking from your heart and your soul. I mean, come on. If you can talk to someone and describe that and they are energized about it and they want to support you and they have the perfect role for you, then that's where you belong, man. Even if it's just temporary, like it's a means to get you to the next phase, and that's truly what you have to do. If you're being inauthentic about the way you describe these things and someone's happy to give you a role, it's just not gonna be as good of a fit, and it's not gonna be as rewarding, and it's not gonna be the perfect step to where you're wanting to head, so just consider that. Now I want to begin to empower you to start creating your own personal brand. Hopefully, I've kinda won you over a little bit on why it's so important, and how you might have the wrong perception and how that's truthfully not at all your fault. But anyways, I want to do a quick exercise again at the end. I want you to pause this slide and jot down a few things because it's going to come in handy. I want you to describe your discipline without using titles, majors, or roles. Discipline as a broad term. You can definitely use the word art, but try not to use artist. You can add artists later if it's that critical, if it's not obvious from your personal brand that you're an artist, then that's fine. You can include artists later, but this will help you be more intentional about the perception that you're building, and what you really want others to see. And if you need a little bit more inspiration, I can give you a quick example. So I want you to, as I'm reading this, think about what title fits this description. Okay. I engage with my community to spread literacy, especially among our youth, and I advocate for the appreciation of classic literary works. Right now, I'm describing a librarian, and it might seem obvious in retrospect. And if I would have given you a little bit more time, I'm sure that you would have figured it out if you didn't already. But yeah, I mean, just think about the difference here. If someone introduced themselves to you and said, "Hi, I'm so and so, I'm a librarian," you're going to make your own assumptions, whatever those are. You might think that that's freaking awesome and one of the coolest jobs that you can have because you get to just engorge yourself with literature, and that might seem great to you. But you also might have the perception that a librarian is boring or that a librarian doesn't have amazing social skills, and that's just simply not true on an individual basis. Um, but if someone introduced themselves to you and said, "Hi, I'm so and so. I engage with my community to spread literacy. It's really important to me, especially among our youth. And classic literary works are so important to me, and I advocate for the mass appreciation of them." Do you see how, like, and they can say, "Yeah, I work at the library." So this is just such a stronger way to convey passion, and it makes a huge difference, especially whenever we're talking about it in terms of you as artists. If you can describe your art and the way you engage with it in this way, people are going to see so much more value in you and your passion and your art than just introducing yourself as an artist. So If you haven't already, definitely pause and take the time to write down a short blurb. If you can come up with a few sentences, great. More, do whatever you can, but make sure it's authentic. Now, I want you to consider, if you're a visual artist, I'm sure you've got this on lockdown, but consider the power of color, the illusion of font, and the perception of consistency, because these are going to be huge things in building out your personal brand. So, just a quick example here are a few different fonts. And what you might notice immediately is that they're all telling you something different. They're all saying the same exact words, but they're saying something different. A few of them might even stuck out to you immediately. And that might be a good indication of the types of fonts that you would incorporate in your personal brand. You can also pull from the word bank of descriptors that you came up with earlier. If some of the words are like bold, or like, crazy or whatever, maybe you want to use literally a boldface font. If some of the words that you use to describe yourself were things like elegant or dainty or intricate or things like this, you might use a thinner, maybe cursive font. It's also important to keep in mind that you'll probably use one, maybe two of these as your header fonts, and then you'll choose one that's a little bit more subdued for a body text, in the case that you might be writing a bit. Next, again, visual artists, I'm sure you got this, but for the rest of us, some quick color associations. Whenever you're picking out some colors, think about what it is that color is saying. Again, it's just going to seem really off if all of your art is nature based and you're very eccentric, and you have all of these sorts of elements in your art, and then your brand is bold red. It's just not going to resonate. So make sure you're picking something that reflects how your art feels. And if your art is really dynamic, that's awesome. Certain colors naturally convey like a sense of being dynamic. To me, like this pink color at the bottom, it's very dynamic. So just keep that sort of thing in mind. If your art is very commentary based, social commentary is paired really well with orange, because we see orange as kind of a cautionary thing. So if your main colors are white and black and you use a bit of orange to embellish on certain important, meaningful messages, I would say that's really strong branding. Um, just taking some more of that sort of thing into consideration, and you can Google color associations if you really want to get some more context here and think about this deeper. But I do want to give you a few tips. First, we talked about this, but people are going to perceive you based on their own lived experiences, and you don't really want to leave it up to that. That's too varied. So you want to choose that perception in professional settings. I mean, truthfully, as an artist, the personal brand that you are curating will probably be able to apply to you in all settings, not just professional settings. For me, as a business student, there's certain expectations that how I show up at work is going to be professional. And so I have to leave out a few things in my personal brand that I would definitely incorporate if I was an artist and just going solely for art. So, make sure that it's very authentic to you. Reflect your brand even in verbal interactions. We'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide, but think about that. Whenever you're talking to someone, you should be able to pull from that word bank and describe your art and describe your passion. Um, it, just practicing it is really, really great. The more you can get to the point where you're communicating with people about what it is you want them to understand about you and your art, the better. It's just going to serve you down the road. A few more tips. Like I mentioned, consistency is key. People are going to perceive you and your art as more professional, or maybe not. I mean, in some cases, they will perceive it as more professional, but they'll definitely perceive your offering as more um, holistic, in a sense that, the art that they're buying is from someone who is very diligent and cares very deeply about their art, is very invested in their art, because they see this consistency, regardless of what the consistency looks like. just keep that consistency. Also, ask for help. You have so many resources here as a student, and we don't do a good enough job of supporting you as artists. So if you need the help, you have to ask for it. I mean, we have plenty of marketing students here who would love to work personally with artists. Not all of us are great at everything to do, with personal branding. I couldn't build a website for you personally, but I could connect you with someone who could. And if you don't know any marketing students specifically, or you don't know of any resources, feel free to email me. I can try to connect you with some of my peers, and maybe we can sort of help you build something out. Also, don't rely too heavily on trends. Even if your art is something that's very, very based in pop culture and just trendy art icons and things like that, that's great. But make sure that your brand isn't fully built on a fad of art style that's going to be obsolete eventually, or that people are in 5 years are gonna look at it and think like, "Yeah, that was really cool 5 years ago." Like, you don't want that, and you want the consistency, so you don't wanna lock yourself into something that is going to fade away. And again, this should not feel only skin deep. I don't know how much more I can harp on it, but authenticity is your best friend always, but especially in this situation. So yeah, now it's your turn. I want you to pick keywords from the list that you made earlier and identify some themes. This probably you can do this from the keyword bank, but if you need some more inspiration, think about your style, your morals, passions, what makes you and your art unique. Um, see if anything like truly resonates with you, because this is also going to contribute to your brand. For me, I would say a theme might be sustainability. I didn't specifically mention that from any of the prompts, but it's definitely a theme in how I want to engage with the world and what I want my career to look like. So that might be insightful for you. And then again, determine your color scheme, your font list, or your illustration style. Is it like a, a thick, bold stroke, or is it very thin and very detailed? If you haven't played around in Canva, you definitely should. It's the easiest way to come up with what we call a brand kit, which is really just your fonts your go-to fonts, your go-to colors, and just a few samples of maybe the illustration style that you want to keep your consistency built around. And then think of where you can apply your personal brand. So if you have a website, great place to start. Definitely use it on your social media. And if you have an account specifically for your art, that should be like the oasis, the the perfect spot for you to rehearse that personal brand and start putting that out there and see how people are engaging with it. But additionally, if you have an Etsy page, that's a great place. If you are willing and capable and have the need to create business cards, put it on there. Put a QR code to your Etsy page. Experiment with some different ways that you can start trafficking your sites. And really quickly, I want just to be able to check your authenticity while you're doing this. You should be able to use the same keyword bank and theme list to describe your passion, your role, your goals, your art to a novice in your field and to an expert. So, a beginning artist being able to speak to your passion, it's going to inspire them. It's someone who is a complete expert. If you get to a position where you're able to talk to someone who is where you wanna be in 20 years, then being able to describe this passion is going to be so big. They might be a supporter for life. They might get you to places you never thought you'd be. But also being able to describe this same passion to someone who's completely uninterested in art. It's an awesome skill. I want you to remember that personal branding isn't only for corporate-minded people or sellouts. Instead, imagine it as a way to tell people what to think about your art and seek the help that you need to use this knowledge and to learn intentionally and to reach people who can support you. So I hope that this helped you rethink the idea of personal branding and more in terms of providing context so that you can communicate and build a connection. Again, my name is Jada Wyatt. Here is my email and my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. Feel free to email me with any questions. I hope that this was really beneficial. So I look forward to hearing from some of you. And best of luck at the art sale. I will be there to support. But yeah, awesome. Thank you for listening.